people in technology can often get into the habit of techno speak or techno babble. And I think that can be a rude awakening when you're trying to solicit new clients.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have James Chillingworth, who is the founder of The Consulting Practice Incorporated, a company specializing in cybersecurity and IT consulting. With extensive experience in the field, he has been pivotal in developing innovative security solutions and strategies for various organizations. James holds a degree from the University of Waterloo and has held many key positions at companies such as Network Appliance and Stratus Computer, which is why we're kind of excited to have him on the show today. James, welcome to the program.
Hey, Devin, thank you very much for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig into some of your experience here. It looks like you've spent quite some time in the space. And so to kind of kick things off here, James, I'd love to get a Coles Notes version of your history, who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the founder of the Consulting Practice Inc.
Sure. So I think, as you mentioned, I graduated from the University of Waterloo. So I studied mathematics and computer science there. When I came out of university, I did software development. And I realized that it's kind of like watching paint dry. It's, at least for me anyway. Some people are enthusiastic about it, but for me, it wasn't super exciting. I did do this for a couple of years though. And then I joined some technology companies as my career progressed, including the likes of Tandem Computer and Stratus Computer. You mentioned them. And both of those organizations are fault-tolerant computing companies. Also did work with Network Appliance, I think, as you mentioned. And also worked in the telecommunications space. So worked for a company called Nortel, which doesn't exist anymore for a number of reasons. And then worked for some networking technology organizations. And then around about 20 years ago, I decided to launch the consulting practice. And that's also our website. So it's www.theconsultingpractice.com. And initially focusing on IT consulting services in the greater Toronto area, but very quickly started doing cybersecurity type work and with a client base across North America. And so that's kind of been the focus or our area of market. In terms of verticals, don't really have a vertical particularly because cybersecurity seems to span a number of different industries. However, have done lots of work in the areas of energy technology organizations, so financial organizations, as well as including banking and lending entities. And again, clients across North America from California up to Yukon even, and then across to Newfoundland, Labrador, and down to Florida. So that's kind of covering North America. In terms of cybersecurity, we assist clients with doing kind of the natural progression, which starts usually with some sort of assessment following some sort of framework or standard. The ISO, CIS Top 18, NIST, etc. Progressing through there and providing recommendations, and then maybe even implementing these recommendations. We also do external threat analysis, which can include pen testing and other attack surface methodologies, and then of course, kind of rounding it all out, assist with doing policies, procedures, processes, etc., and as well, in addition to tool recommendation implementation. And then we can assist organizations with operating their environment as needed. Yeah, so that's kind of a quick snapshot. Say that was quick enough of our organization and background. Yeah.
Yeah, you seem to be a man of opportunity, James. From what I kind of gathered from a little bit of your history, it seems like in starting the consulting practice, there's some room for you to serve in maybe a multifaceted level of different skills. And I'm sure that as the founder, you've been plagued with the idea of wearing many hats, I'm sure. As the business has evolved, can you kind of talk to how some of your day-to-day stuff and what your kind of current role is now, how that's evolved over time?
Sure. Yeah. And in fact, through my career, I've done a number of different roles as you're suggesting. And that includes, as I mentioned already, doing software development, then went out to do performance analysis and tuning, architecture type work, networking activities. And then evolved into doing product management, project management, and then of course account management, which is kind of managing customers or clients. Excuse me. So, on a day-to-day basis, I'm interacting with clients and prospects on a regular basis, and then I end up getting my hands dirty with managing a lot of projects. Not as hands-on as I've been in the past, but push comes to shove. Sometimes you're called into do various activities. Case in point was we had an organization, a client that was extorted, and did everything from kind of initial engagement with the client through to some hands-on, because there were nuances with regards to migrating them to a whole new platform for their infrastructure. And that wasn't trivial because some of the migration processes are intuitive. And so kind of had to do a bit of problem solving as well. And that ended up kind of being hands-on. So, but generally I'm more kind of managing our client and their expectations, and then managing projects specifically as well. So, yeah.
There's a balance, I guess, between finding the clients and then serving the clients. And as you mentioned, you find yourself off the tools, as it were, now kind of dealing with some of the more higher level stuff like marketing and client acquisition. In your early days, I wonder how that shaped your approach to kind of systemizing the process of acquiring a new customer, because I know that in this day and age, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot going on. It takes a lot to differentiate oneself. As you know, 80% of businesses fail in that first year, and it seems like you've really carved your place in the market. I wonder if you could share some of your experiences in terms of how you've managed to navigate that space.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm pretty passionate about cybersecurity. I get up every day and that's what I think about. I think I have dreams about it too. But it kind of, in order to establish credibility, I end up doing a number of speaking engagements. So I've spoken to a number of institutions, my alma mater, the University of Waterloo. I've spoken there before, as well as um, universities in California. I've spoken at OWASP events, Open Web. Sorry, it used to be called Open Web. It's now called Open World Application Security Project, OWASP. And I've spoken at ISSA, which is Information System Security Association. And also, I think it's important to participate and be in the game or in the industry. So I do volunteer. I volunteer with ISSA once again, and that's the Los Angeles chapter. So I'm vendor director there, which basically encompasses me kind of reaching out and trying to solicit or introduce vendors to our organization, because ISSA has an annual summit, and that's coming up October 8th and 9th in Santa Monica on the beach. Interesting side note, it's at a venue called the Annenberg House, and the Annenberg House is actually on the beach in Santa Monica. So when you're in some of the presentation rooms, maybe listening to a presentation, and knows what often happens, you kind of get caught up in the moment, you're paying attention, and then the discussion concludes. So you step outside, and 10 steps later, you're standing on the sand in Santa Monica on the beach. And at the conclusion of the day, there's usually a reception with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and that kind of thing, and you can watch the sunset. So I'm patronizing for that event, I guess. But I'm a volunteer at that event. So that's one method for me to be kind of in the game, in the business. In addition to that, in terms of the whole sales and marketing approach, there's different ways that you could do that as well. And to continue on the discussion about awareness, one thing I do try and do is post regularly on social media. So entities like LinkedIn, for example, I usually find an article that I find of interest, and I provide some commentary on the article as well, because often there's maybe some nuances that I can enlighten upon, and so I'll use that. And in addition, I mentioned there are some organizations I participate with. The one I volunteer with is ISSA Los Angeles. I'm also involved with an organization called the CISO Society. and that is a relatively new entity, but is mostly comprised of CISOs or virtual CISOs or people that work with chief information security officers. And there's a monthly events that or certain products are demonstrated. However, it's not really purposely built to be a method of soliciting. So there's not really solicitation that goes on, but it's mostly about awareness and making sure that CISOs are in the game and understanding what's happening. And then also there are events with the CISO Society that are kind of like what they call a Chatterhouse Rules, where it's kind of like a discussion on certain topics or events that are occurring. And so I think that gives me insight into the business. And then once again, I'm in the business. And then finally, I wanted to mention another venue or method, and that is by attending conferences as well. So sometimes sometimes I'm speaking at conferences, and other times I'm attending conferences. And there are some pretty notable ones in the cybersecurity space. I think everyone probably knows about RSA, and that's held in San Francisco in springtime every year. So I've attended that event. And there's a couple of others coming up very shortly in Las Vegas. That is Black Hat, and I will be attending that event. And then I usually also attend DEF CON. Those two events kind of overlap one another. Black Hat is definitely a much more commercially focused event for cybersecurity entities. And then DEF CON was traditionally more of a hacker-focused event, so there's not really a lot of sponsorship and that kind of thing. However, it has somewhat become mainstream because at DEF CON last year, the gentleman responsible for Homeland Security, Mayorkas is his name, he actually presented to the whole event as one of the keynote speakers. So it kind of shows you that it's, I mean, in the past, you would have strictly thought that hackers wouldn't want any sort of government entity discussing anything in front of them. But here we are, so that's the state of the industry right now. Yeah. So those are kind of the methods. And then I'll just also conclude in that there's other methods that I've used in the past also to solicit clients, and that is various kind of campaigns. And the more you can automate those campaigns, the better. And so there's methods to do that with LinkedIn and other technologies, including Apollo.io is, I think, is the name of the company. There's a method of kind of scripting messaging that can go out until you're getting to a warmer prospect, and then when you can engage directly either by email or phone, or we're setting up video conference calls, that kind of thing. So maybe that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I try to be succinct, but I also want to be accurate. So
Right. There's a lot to unpack there because I mean, from a 30,000-foot view, it looks like a lot of your efforts are personal, relationship building, networking, handshake deals, one-on-one kind of stuff. And I mean, pardon the pun here, but it's like an old school way of going about doing things. But then you also touched on bringing in these new versions of marketing campaigns with automations and lead gen and all these other really cool gizmos and gadgets. And so by the sounds of it, you have a pretty well-rounded approach to the way that you put yourself out there. You build the brand, you get that awareness, and then the people that are motivated or ready to work with you can do that. I wonder, James, if you could walk me through what that kind of looks like now from like discovery to deal. Like once they're in your ecosystem now, you're engaged with them. How do you manage those relationships efficiently to make sure that you're able to serve as many people as possible?
So one method is, maybe I'm using an automated, there's a whole bunch of options and varieties, but suppose I'm using an automated method and I reach out to someone and become engaged with them in terms of discussion. It could lead to, a quick initial discussion. And it might be that there's follow-on, hey, let's keep touching base, see how things are progressing. And sometimes I'm finding that I'm in discussions with people who are active in the industry, and then other times people who are actively looking for employment in the industry. And so regardless, when people are looking for an engagement, they're going to land somewhere. And then if they already have a relationship established with myself, chances are they may utilize our capabilities from the consulting practice. So that's one method. Another method is it could be that, again, once I've reached out to someone, it could be, well, hey, there's an event coming up, Black Hat. I'm going to be at Black Hat. Will you be attending? Hey, maybe let's plan on meeting up. And so I've got a number of sessions set up because of that kind of networking. And I guess it really does boil down to kind of the human touch or the human interaction, because people want to feel confident that they're doing business with people that they know and understand. And so as it relates to our clients, I would say that the majority of the clients that we land, or that we land directly from the consulting practice as direct clients, are kind of through this personal touch mechanism. I didn't mention another way that we're obtaining business, and that is through aligning with larger integrators. And it seems that a number of larger corporations, when they're seeking a business partner, they obviously want to have a larger business partner deal with them. And so there's companies like Optiv, for example. They are the de facto leader in the industry in terms of providing cybersecurity technologies to organizations. And they often complement their resourcing capabilities, project capabilities, et cetera, with external consultants. And so we've worked with them in the past also. And so there's a number of these kind of larger integrators that we deal with. And in that context, again, it's kind of the human touch, the human confidence, so that, if we're contacted, hey, we have an opportunity, we need to do this large assessment for an organization, can your team step up and do it? And we can say, yeah, we certainly can. So the confidence is already established in our relationship with this business partner, and they bring us into a client, which is likely a larger client. So I would say that to partition the industry, like, we're not directly landing business with very large organizations, usually small to medium-sized companies. And then the larger ones we're landing through a business partner. Yeah. Or an integrator. Yeah.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And it's one of those things where it's difficult to attribute to, which one of these multiple touch points your success is coming from. And beyond that, there's the scalability factor. Given that there's a lot of these one-on-one kind of interactions, it makes it a little bit more difficult to do it more frequently or more often to kind of grow your business. I wonder if you could speak to some of the challenges or bottlenecks that you kind of experience in that process.
Yeah, that definitely is a challenge, because you can't do everything. And so you have to rely on external resources. And kind of the model initially, when an organization of our size is doing business, we're relying on our business partners ourselves. So we're subcontracting work to do. And
Right.
so as long as we're keeping our subcontractors busy, then that's great. And then we can continue growing. And then we also work with other business partners that are set up similar to us. And so they may have resources that we need, and vice versa. And so there's a synergy that occurs there, where that enables us to grow as well, because the more success we have mutually, then the more success we're growing as holistically together. Yeah.
So I guess, what metrics do you use then to measure what success means for you guys? Because it's like one of the things I'm very present to is something one of my mentors told me a long time ago, which is, if it takes you longer than 6 months to sell somebody something, the thing that you're selling isn't big enough or important enough for them to need it. And the longevity of your business isn't going to be there because you don't have a client that you can continue to serve. So if you look at that as like one of maybe many metrics of success, is like, okay, it took me a while to build a relationship with this person or with this business or this entity. Now that we're working with them, we have to do X, Y, Z in order for this to be a successful partnership or ongoing engagement.
Hmm.
So I wonder, by what metrics are you kind of using to determine that your efforts are fruitful versus like outside of I'm profitable?
Yeah. So I think it's pretty simple. I mean, if we're dealing with a client or a business partner, and we land more than one engagement with them, I think that's the proof of success. So it's multiple engagements, and that's what we want. It's the one-offs where, we do work for a client, and then we do it once, and then we don't hear from them again, or we don't engage with them again. I mean, we're always trying to communicate with our clients and prospects. But yeah, if it's a one-off, then that's kind of not success. And then if it's multiple engagements, then it's successful. Yeah. So, and it's an easy metric. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we're a boutique consulting company, so it's not like, you know, so we're boiling the ocean and doing, complex analysis to determine what our market should be, what our market share is, or success rate beyond what I've illustrated to you so far. Yeah.
Well, then on that note, James, I'd love to kind of look into the future and at perhaps some of the goals and milestones that you're aiming at. How far are you going to ride this thing until the wheels fall off?
At this stage, there's no end date per se, if that's the one question you're asking. And then the other thing, there's some strategic initiatives that we're looking at doing, and one is offering more of an MSSP offering. So at the moment we do mostly project and consultative work or resourcing work as well.
Mhm.
But we're looking at offering more of a continually managed service, just focused on cybersecurity. So MSP is managed service provider, and that's usually focused on IT. And now an MSSP is a managed security service provider. So we can offer the MSSP service to MSPs. So that's one avenue we're looking at, or we can provide an MSSP service, which also includes the MSP offering. So, or does not include the offering. So a lot of customers may, and there's some good data that validates this, showing that, clients are looking for some sort of managed security protection service. So that's what we could do. So on a continual basis, we'll do external analysis of their environment and make recommendations, and then assist them with implementing those recommendations. So that's one offering we're looking at. Another one that's curious, because this is quite recent, is that we had in the past offered to resell technology from other technology organizations that have like specialization. And we've done that in the past, and we're looking at doing that once again. It seems like we're getting contacted all the time by different technology organizations, and they often have some really unique capabilities that I think can align with our client base. And just to follow on from the MSSP offering, I don't think it's a cookie cutter offering, because every client kind of has different needs. So maybe one client is maybe more focused on their data security.
Mhm.
Another organization may be focused on availability. Another may be focused on backup. Another one on performance, et cetera. So everyone has kind of different characteristics. And if you're offering an MSSP solution, there may be the ability to bring in other technologies to apply to them. So we're trying to stay attuned to evolutions in the industry, in the cyberspace, and making sure that we've got those technologies maybe in our basket as well. So we're looking at starting to resell a number of technologies that we've come across that we believe are really, really solid. We do come across some other technologies that are maybe as appropriate, or at least from our perception, but yeah, there's a lot of great stuff out there. And then just to comment on technologies for a second, there's been a lot of discussion about cybersecurity tool glut. Like there are too many tools. We have too many tools in our environment. We're not using them appropriately. I think that's not really the right way of viewing it. And then I think what organizations should do is take it, well, firstly, understand their KPIs. So, like, what are their key performance indicators in terms of their business, and what do they need to do? And then try and align, well, what kind of tools, technology, people, process, policy, resources we can align to solve or ensure those KPIs continue to be satisfied. And then once you have that, then you can go and have a look at your inventory. And the inventory is not just tools, but the inventory is tools, resources, policies, procedures, et cetera, as I've mentioned. And then you identify where all of those resources can be applied. And I'm a firm believer in using overlapping technologies, because a cybersecurity tool could fail. And if it fails, you could be out of business. But if you have some sort of backup capability, then you're going to sustain your operations. And so think it's important to take an inventory of all of those tools as well to make sure that you understand what gap, what security areas they're able to address, and ensure that there's appropriate overlap in case that tool fails. So I'm an advocate of overlapping tools. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the level of contingency, right? Like even in this very moment, I have multiple things running at the same time to make sure that I don't miss, any part of the conversation while we're capturing it. And so that because experience has taught me that sometimes you can have a really great conversation and it not work, and then you lose what that value could be. So I think that kind of correlation to the work that you're doing in terms of having some overlapping protection means that, yeah, if one kind of gets breached or fails, then having that second contingency creates
Mhm.
that second or creates that safety net that you need to make sure that the work that you're doing is effective.
Yeah, case in point as well. So here's a scenario for you. So you've got your CEO, he's on a business trip, he's got his cell phone with him, and he's remote, and the network goes down, the phone network goes down,
Hmm.
and you're trying to reach him. The particular phone network goes down. And you're trying to reach him and you can't because there's a $10 million decision to be made, and you can't reach him. If you don't get him by the end of the day, then you've lost the business, $10 million in revenue. So what do? Again, he's remote. He's not near anything. He can't be reached. The network is down. Maybe he doesn't even know the network is down. So that's a dilemma, right?
Mhm.
But if you have an overlapping approach, which is quite easy, and talk about mobile networks, they often are now going down. So, their the downtime is more than I probably would have anticipated a few years ago. So what if the same executive had a separate phone, maybe a different technology, running on a different cellular network? Bam, then they're in the habit of checking both phones simultaneously, and they would have, just continued. They would have been able to make that decision, that 10-minute decision. And so that's what I do. I've got tools, technology, because, well, I mean, this whole fault tolerant is in my DNA now, because I think I mentioned I work for Stratus and Tandem Computers, and those are high availability compute platforms, which are where everything is redundant. So it's that's where my overlapping philosophy comes from initially, I guess. Yeah.
James, I'm a two-phone guy myself, and I'll just say this one thing that will change probably a million people's minds on the two-phone idea here. It used to be that I had one on the wall and I had one that I carried with me. And if I lost the one I carried with me, I could go to the one on the wall and give it a call.
Yep. Yeah.
I can't do that anymore because I don't have my wall phone. So now I have to have a
Yeah.
secondary phone just in case this one goes down. So I have that one up and running. And you just never know. Having that contingency is really, really valuable. And that's incredible advice. Much like a lot of the insight and wisdom that you've shared in this entire conversation, I gotten a tremendous amount of value, James. I'm very grateful for that. To kind of wrap things up here, I wonder
Sure.
if you could maybe share for those out there who are kind of in a similar role as you, where they're facing similar challenges, trying to build their business, scale things up, take on new customers. What's one piece of advice that you could offer them to help them kind of overcome those challenges and stay the course?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question for me because it's top of mind right now based on the current cybersecurity market. And I've spoken to clients where, they've had they had a cybersecurity organization come in because they had a breach. So the company came in, resolved the breach, got them back up and running, and then had a special presentation where they reviewed all of their capabilities with the customer and then left. And then the customers all looked at each other and go, we didn't understand anything they were talking about. So I think it's that people in technology can often get into the habit of techno speak or techno babble. And I think that can be a rude awakening when you're trying to solicit new clients. So I like to try and talk in terms of, well, firstly, I try and understand, what is my client's business? Like, explain to me what your business is. And then I mentioned this before, and explain to me what your KPIs are. Like, what are your main metrics? What are the main systems, and how do you make money? What's the most critical components of that environment? And then the next question is, explain to me what inventory you have in terms of resources, technology, et cetera, to address that. And then maybe we can engage in terms of seeing if there's a gaps between what you have currently in place and what you're trying to achieve from a business perspective. So I think if you talk in those kind of business terms, you're going to be you're going to be way better received when you're talking to C-level executives, or maybe even at the board level, because they understand their business and they understand tangible things. They don't understand the nuances of an advanced firewall, technology capability, or endpoint protection. Kind of people's eyes kind of gloss over if they're in a business. They just want you to talk in terms of their business terms, or business terms in general, and then KPIs and metrics and that kind of thing. So yeah, shift the conversation if you can, and only talk about technology if you're 100% confident that the clients are understanding of it. Yeah. So that's my conclusion.
There's a lot to be said about the value of having clear, concise communication that resonates with the person that you're speaking to in the language that they speak, because we might be both speaking English, but some of the things that we value are going to be very different, and you can figure that out through simple conversation. And if you're present to it, I love that that's the advice. It's helpful to understand who it is that you're trying to serve so that you can serve them better. So very, very, very sound advice. James, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further, or maybe work with you in the future, how would one go about doing that?
I think a really good way is on LinkedIn. So I'm James Chillingworth on LinkedIn. That's an easy way of doing it. Or if you want to email me, it's jchilli, so JCHILLI at consultingpractice.com, or visit our website at consultingpractice.com. And yeah.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to link to all that stuff in the show notes so people can get in touch with you easily. On that note, if somebody wants to get in touch with me and my team for any reason, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.